Good morning, my friend Lakeisha Womack. I am so glad we have a moment to just kind of come full circle here from meeting you with your platform that you did on Rethinking Church. So I just had to come back and ask some questions to engage you. So first, just tell our watchers and the listeners what you want them to know about you before we jump in here.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. My name is Lakeisha Womack. I am the founder of Rethinking Church Strategies. We are a social impact organization, and we just had our Rethinking Church Virtual Summit, which was a 4-day event with 60 speakers, and the information is on my YouTube channel. I'm also a business and marketing consultant, which I've been doing for the past 15 years. I've worked with clients across the globe to help them start and grow successful organizations. So I'm excited to be here with you to talk about leadership and pivoting in this season.
Yeah, so I just had to ask you. I know when we talk about pivoting, I can only imagine what your journey was like, right? Because for me, it was like one of the first summits that was a virtual summit in the time of pandemic, right? And so I said, this lady has to be pivoting and praying.
Lots of praying, lots
So
of praying.
please just describe to us what that journey was like in the pivoting and the process.
Well, it was really interesting because I am a minister. And, sometimes that God gives you the vision and you're really just not sure how it's going to happen. And so when he gave me the vision and I kind of teased it out on Facebook and people were like, yes, I want to register. I want to be a part of this. And I was like, oh, wait. And so my co-host and I, were just talking about it. And we had a very big vision for who we wanted to be our keynote speakers. And, we prayed over it and we reached out and, requested, them to be a part of it. And they said yes. And we were both online like, oh my God, can you believe like Dr. Teresa Brown? Oh my God, can you believe Dr. Miguel De La Torre? Oh my God, can you believe? Oh my God, can you believe Dr. Mitzi Smith? So once we got like our keynote speakers, we were also doing a call for speakers. And so instead of, just having people to present that we knew, we really wanted to have a diverse group of presenters. And it was humbling to see the applications come in and the caliber of people who wanted to be a part of this virtual event. And then we had the audacity to actually charge for the event in a climate where like there's like so much free content out there, to charge people, and people were registering and really engaged. So then we had to find like a platform because we couldn't just do another Zoom conference. So then we started looking at all these virtual event platforms and we settled in on Hopin, and it ended up just all coming together by God's grace and mercy. So now we have the videos available on YouTube and people are still watching and being blessed by the content. So it was definitely a faith walk because I was like, I see it, but I have no idea how this is going to happen.
Well, so you talked about your journey. Now describe what your spiritual inspiration was for it.
So for the past few years, I've been doing teaching around digital discipleship. And it's really interesting because a lot of churches were resistant because they were like, we don't need to be online and, the people need to come to church and people are just lazy. And my thinking was, not everyone doesn't attend church physically because they don't want to. Like some people are disabled. Some people are caring for elderly family members. You have people who are away in college or away in the military. And so integrating technology is not only a way for you to engage your current membership, but it's also a way for us to, for the first time in history, fulfill the Great Commission, because we're told to go and disciple all nations. And with, a few keystrokes, you're able to share information with all nations. For the summit, we actually had people from England and Africa attending and participating. And if we had done this like in a hotel somewhere in Charlotte, those people probably would not have been able to afford airfare, hotel, and registration to be there. So technology is the opportunity for us to really broaden our message. So we had that vision, and it was interesting how it just all came together.
Well, you said, I hadn't thought about this before now. because I guess we just take some things for granted, right? Based on our location. Having spent time in the military, having done ministry in the military, I mean, because I often tell people I come to SPA by faith in my professional life as well as in my ministry life, right? There's no separating the two. When I was deployed, you're right, we did not have the opportunity to have virtual worship service, you know?
Yeah.
I was over in the desert a couple of times, and we had chapel, and we'd have chapel like right after we get off a 12-hour shift, you know?
Yeah.
And you had to go because it wasn't like they had 3 or 4 services today. So straight for that, you know?
Exactly.
And ministry is still going on because that we're in the very atmosphere where we are speaking to souls of people who are there for a job, right? Doing the mission. But their soul need to be fed as well, you know? And so I quickly learned to connect with the chapel over there, connect with the chaplain. And we had some awesome services. I met some wonderful ministers over there. I mean, you talk about church on the road, in the desert.
Right.
Some moments of worship because, you know, we were just grateful to see another day and to be able to help other people. And you talk about servant leadership. I mean, you didn't have time to think about you, you know?
Right.
You really were there to speak to the soul and feed the souls of other individuals. And so as you, so I just want to say, one, thank you, because I'm sure my service friends who are still serving are grateful for this opportunity to have virtual worship service, you know. And when you talk about the changing in the landscape, you know, you asked some questions on your one of your platforms about what does church look like 20 years from now, right?
Right.
And I thought about what it looks like to be when it comes to doing the Great Commission. When we have a change in the landscape of membership are decentralized, they're coming from all over the land, all over the world. And so we are speaking to, and people are hungry, you know, for a right now word, you know, in this time of uncertainty. And so I think the greatest reward, though, is when you see people really benefiting from what you're talking about. So when we talk about the virtual church and we talk about the digital age, and you talked about churches who are not ready and really able to go there, can you talk more about the feedback and the testimony that you've had with individual churches and church leaders since your summit?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. I'll say like one of the most interesting comments that we received from the summit was the request for a book list. Like I have never been to a conference or a summit where like the number one request was like, we want a book list. Like we know what your presenters are reading. And so that's something that we've been curating and trying to like pull together, you know, some books that people can use as resources. And so that was really interesting. Then there were some churches who, in my mind, are just doing ministry really well that reached out and said, you know, because of your summit, we're rethinking how we do this component of our ministry, or we're rethinking how, you know, we do our outreach. And the people who have made connections with each other. And now, you know, it may be someone who's in a Baptist church that's doing some work with a Methodist church. And just people really took this as an opportunity to connect with each other to help build up the kingdom. Because I think so often, even when we have these types of events, like the Methodists are doing their conference and the Baptists are doing their conference, and you just don't see as many events that are ecumenical and that, you know, don't have any type of denominational affiliation. So I would say that has been one of the biggest like joys to me, is just how communities have come together. And then finally, one of the components of the summit were our think tanks. And yes. And so, you know, like, as you know, I'm a very process-driven person, and I was really frustrated because the think tanks just didn't really materialize the way I envisioned. And so we are so excited that this week we launched our social network on Mighty Networks. And so now we have a place for the think tanks to do their work. And some of the think tanks have really taken off, but I'm prayerful that now that we have a space, that all of them will begin to gel and to start doing the work together. So those are some of the highlights for me from the event.
Well, you know, let's go back to the platform. You said it's called, your platform that you're using now is called the Mighty Networks, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it is there that I discovered that you are building another platform. And this is what I'm talking about, being able to walk in our gifts, and not because the church doors have closed, the church hasn't closed,
Right.
and we can still do ministry. So I
Yeah.
think that when you talk about partnering with churches, partnering with churches, and churches partnering with ministry, when it comes to sharing, it takes a lot for people to say, to be able to share what they have.
Yeah.
There's no secret here. We're all in this together.
We should be, right? Like in theory,
We should be in this all together. And so we should have allies coming from all corners, and we should be an ally to others, who are not as fortunate. Again, when we talk about digital, a lot of people who was already digital, but what I see the 20 years from now is more churches having both platforms, virtual as well as in-person services, even post-pandemic.
Yeah.
Because again, we have the group of members that are joining, which is what our Great Commission is all about, is capturing souls. But I want to ask you, as we talk about laying a platform and ministering to new souls, one of your partners talked about, one of your members of your platform talked about church being flexible and innovative when it comes to 20 years from now and even in present time. For new members, to reaching new members. And I thought about at that moment, churches may also have to become innovative when it comes to ministry formation for growing leaders in the church. And so I thought about what was a leadership program plan or leadership development plan look like today? Because I know you do consulting. So just talk to us. Just be candid with us. Be honest with us. I know we use leadership programs in public and private and government organizations, right? But I have a follow-on question after that. So let me write it down before I forget. Talk to us about that, what it looks like for a church to have a leadership development program. Because one of your presenters did talk about having to rethink their LDP.
Yeah. I think that it's important for church leaders to be cognizant of their leadership style. So what I found with a lot of churches is that we make assumptions about what people bring to the table. And so sometimes people are put into leadership positions because of a title that they may have in their secular job without any real analysis being done. Like, how you lead in the secular world and how you lead in church are two totally different things, because like our leadership in church requires a lot of grace and a lot of mercy. Because you have to recognize that you're dealing with a different constituency and that you have to be more gentle with people. Even, when we look at people who are ineffective in their roles, like, are they ineffective because they don't have a desire to be successful, or are they ineffective because we haven't done a very good job of teaching them and training them how to be effective? So, for example, we'll have someone that we'll put in charge of our Sunday school because they're a teacher at school. But just because you're a teacher at school does not mean that you know how to teach the Bible, because you may have people asking probing questions. And as a teacher, you're telling people, sit down and be quiet because I'm lecturing. Whereas when you're in the church and you want to encourage dialogue and you want people to think deeply. So we don't do a very good job of really assessing what type of leadership is needed in our churches, what type of people do we have that we're leading, and then how do we ensure that our leaders have the leadership style that will help them to be successful?
Yes, leadership style, because I've taught for the past year at my church, I was teaching like the seed ministry for new members, right? And yes, I've taught training and so forth in the military for years, but in the church, having to know the Bible and then having to be able to meet people where they are, right? Yeah. So they don't feel like they have to come in having to have already gone to the seminary, or that this is the first time that they met Christ when they came to the class. You have to be able to listen, to what they're saying, and then be able to, like I like to reach back from what my founding pastor of my home church in New York would say, Lord, give me the love that goes from heart to heart and from breast to breast. Right. That have a community of inclusiveness,
Yes.
And that is where I think that when we start ministering to people, when we're ministers, And when we walk in the faith and when we trust God for everything. We don't compartmentalize our lives. You know, even though facilitating is different in the church than it is in our profession, I do it. I try to be conscious of it, doing it with the same love that embraces one another, that includes everybody. Because again, we're all in this together, and so we need to be a community of sharing and caring. You know,
Yeah.
everybody who everybody is somebody, and so I'm gonna talk about. I want to throw in here Reverend Teresa Farr Brown. She said we should be mindful of the meal we prepare at the table where we serve, and not worry about the table at somebody else's. I can paraphrase it a little bit, and I say that because there are different churches, different styles, you know. And right now, it's like we all wanting to shape what the new normal look like. And if God transforms us in this time, we should also be transforming, you know, ourselves and transforming our vision. So you talked about leadership development, being able to measure leadership styles. And one of the things I studied and reflect on still that I look through the lens of is the gaps of leadership styles, the gap in leadership and the relationship of ministry members or of our members and of other leaders that we're growing. How do we know when leadership development has taken place? That's the question I always walk in with and walk out with is I listen and I want to know because I'm curious.
Right.
Not that I have the answers. I'm still reading, I'm still learning. But the question today that resonates with me is how do we know when leadership development has taken place? How do we know that in ministry formation we have reached our objective? And does ministry formation, you know, where does it end and where does it continue? You know, because we're always reading and we're always growing. So tell me what is it that leaders should understand or can understand better or would seek to understand to know when leadership development has taken place in the church?
Well, I think it goes back to disciple making. So, and I think you mentioned this in the beginning is like, you know, starting with where someone is. And too often when people join the church, we make an assumption that everyone joins from the same place in their life, or that, you know, because of someone's age or how long they were a member of another church, then that automatically assumes that they are a mature disciple. And so I think that we can tell that when leadership development has taken place, when people exhibit the traits of a mature disciple. So when you don't have to, you know, constantly like ask, you know, are you reading your Bible? Do you have a daily devotional life? Are you giving? Are you participating in ministry? When people start to do those things on their own, then we know that we've developed them into leaders. But too often, like our measure of success is how much money are they paying or how often are they attending the activities, when just because you're attending the activities doesn't mean that there's been a change in your heart. It just means that you've gotten into a routine. So I think that for us to really look at who our church leaders are, is like, you know, who has the traits of Christ, like who's out doing the work, whether they get credit or not, who's out, you know, concerned about the souls of their fellow man, who, you know, sees someone that's hungry and has a desire to feed them, who sees someone who's naked on the street and has a desire to clothe them. Those are the people that I consider to be church leaders, not just someone who has a title, because we have plenty of people who have titles in churches, but they don't have a heart for the people.
Whew. One of my friends talked about, she said, you know, being a pastor and being in ministry, it's kind of challenging. It's hard. They didn't ask for it, okay?
Right. Right.
But when they're talking to God, he said, God tells them, listen, love my people. That's all I ask you to do.
Right.
Love the people of God, you know. And you're right. We're here to be able to serve those, not that are lesser than us, but those who just have a need. And we're able to provide that need. I just kind of continue to go through life and I look at this time frame right here is what God is doing in this time, you know. And I say God didn't cause this, but he certainly can use this time frame, you know, that we can look in and be able to do ministry that still aligns with the word of God. You know, what platforms is out there? People still need a word. You know, I live alone. And so I think I go to at least 4 or 5 churches on Sunday morning. Okay.
Gotcha.
And I wake up in the middle of the night and I'll turn on one of the videos, and
Yeah.
then I'm up for the next 4 or 5 hours. But I think that if we can just stay in the presence of the Lord by any means possible,
Right. Right.
by any means possible, would be a great opportunity. So let me ask you, when it comes to your own ministry, how does having a mentor or having a board of mentors contribute to your journey, and still does?
Well, I have been blessed. Like, there are two phenomenal women that I've been able to walk with through my ministry, and just watching the way they lead. One is Reverend Dr. Sandra Coleman, who's in Birmingham, Alabama. She was one of the first women that reached out to me when I started my ministry. And, she just really sat down and talked to me about, how do you remain a woman in ministry? Because so often women have the tendency to want to conform, to be like the boys, and to be a part of the boys club and to do what the boys are doing. And she was just like, God called you to be who you are, and you have special gifts that God can use in the kingdom. And I would say, like, I was very uncertain of myself and just like, what have I gotten myself into? Like, what is this? But, just like having like her wise counsel and her encouragement and her support, really gave me the confidence to be who I am and to use my gifts. The other is Bishop Teresa Jefferson Storton, who's a bishop in the CME Church. And I've been blessed to serve on several ecumenical committees with her. And with her as a chairperson, just watching the way she leads and the way she runs meetings. And she never like attempts to have like, the hard male stance, or she never, has like, this like real just, demure female stance, which, a lot of people place women like in these gender roles. But she always shows up authentically, and she serves like in her own way. And that really, kind of showed me that like I can be the leader that I am naturally. Like, I don't have to try to be someone else and to be accepted. And so I think just having people that I watch and people whose, leadership styles that I admire, and to see how they don't have to say, I'm the leader, I'm the bishop, I'm the presiding elder, I'm this. Like, they just show up as who they are, and they correct you in love, and they give, information, and they're, very generous with their time and helping people, seeing how people gravitate to them and follow them, not because of their titles, but because of how they show up, really impacted me. Because it's in my ministry, I don't have a title right now. Like, I'm just like out here doing whatever. And so for people to like want to be a part of that, it's not because like they're following a title, but I really feel like they're like, yes, like I want to be a part of the work. And so those are the models that I've watched and prayerfully that have influenced the work and how I do the work.
Yeah, I know we were on one of your I think having a mentor, number one, is important. And having I've had male mentors, as well as in the military. I had a male mentor and I had a female mentor. One in regards to navigating the ranks, navigating the requirements. The female mentor that I had was just one being in a institution where men were just the greater number.
Right.
And so you just wanted to always be politically correct, we talk about respectability politics. That was definitely where I learned what that looked like.
Yeah.
But at the same token, I had to get a board of mentors, and I had to discover that. Like, no one handed me a book.
Right.
Because I went in 23 years old. No one handed me a book where I'd be able to do ministry, still be my authentic self in the military. My chief would always say, girl, I know God has to know he got a great fan in you, because you're always talking about. I said, yeah, because I come this far by faith. Every day I think about that, but I learned that at an early age. But at the same token, I have mentors now who I can talk to. And some people, we should say we would do a girlfriend check. Well, now we really do have honest conversations. And not that because I want to hear great things, but because I just want to be able to still learn and to still lean and then to still share. And so it's a two-way journey, where we can be objective. And that's what I'm grateful for, is having friends and relationships, because I think relationships are very important. And when it comes to leadership and rethinking leadership, what does that really look like for everyone? And so my call to action right now is that we all do a self-reflection, and that we create a conversation that's inclusive, where we don't always keep people in, that we don't keep ourselves in supporting roles. At some point, we need to be in a leading role. And I believe one of your presenters talked about that when she talked about new wine.
Yeah, Jessica Ganzi. Yeah, she's amazing.
She talked about new wine, and it's amazing when those of us who have studied and we keep reading, and we've even been to the seminary, we can still learn. We're in a position of just still soaking in new information. And I think right now we're all walking in a newness, right? So we talk about rethinking leadership and rethinking church strategies, and we need to also be considered of what that renewal looks like for us individually and collectively. One of the think tanks you have that I'm a part of is Women in Ministry. And that's what drove me to join, to come to the summit. It was like 4 days, 60 presentations, and 5 keynote speakers. And I said, am I really going to do this? And then when I started think tank, I said, yes, I'm going to do this. And as soon as I joined the think tank, what really touched my heart was there were 2 gentlemen in there. I don't really recall their name. I pray they forgive me. But immediately he said, I just want to be an ally in this think tank and in this process as we go through this journey of discovering what it is to be women in ministry. Some of the things that he observed that we encountered that he doesn't encounter, questions we get that he don't get. The process for him to be ordained is not the same process for his female counterpart to be ordained. So he just wanted to be an ally. And I really appreciated that we could have some honest and candid conversation. And so finally, I just want to ask you, what's next for rethinking church strategies?
That's a great question. I'm very spirit-led, and I learned a long time ago not to, create these great plans for myself or for my ministry, because I just go where God leads me. Because if you had asked a year ago, would I have put this summit together, or would we have this network, would we have these think tanks, I would have been like, no, I'm definitely not, doing that. So God gives me visions, and I know that it sounds hinky to people who, aren't believers or who don't, but, he gives me visions, and I just say, God, bless me with the provision to make these visions a reality. So right now, I'm really just focusing on getting the think tanks to gel, because again, some of the think tanks really took off, and then some of them, had some trouble kind of pulling the group together, pulling information together. So really want to focus some time on getting them together. We're doing a rethinking voting campaign right now, because the upcoming election is really important to all of our communities. So we're doing lives every day with, just different people talking about why voting is important to them. And then, people have already started asking, so what's going to happen at the next summit? So just kind of doing some mind mapping and, discerning from God, what does he see the next summit looking like? And then next year we'll have a series of symposiums. We were going to have them this year, but we really wanted to focus our efforts on the rethinking voting. So we'll be doing the symposiums next year on food security, house security. The women in ministry will have a symposium, economic empowerment, the church of the future. So we have some really exciting plans coming up next year. But right now, we're pulling everyone together in the community so that they can, start to have more of those conversations. And we have a book discussion in November.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sexuality in the Black church. Yes. So we're really excited, so I think that, what is missing in a lot of our churches is, just an encouragement of intellectualism. Okay. So often, we're just kind of like, oh, we're going through the motions of worship. But, are we really encouraging people to read books outside of the Bible and to kind of think through, their spiritual formation and, what does it really mean to be a womanist? What does it really mean to have, sexual trauma in the church and some of the stereotypes that we hold on to, and how do we deconstruct a lot of these toxic traditions that we've been holding on to, so that we can create worship spaces where people can worship in spirit and in truth. I hear people talk about, oh, because there's a position in our denomination that I'm a candidate for. And last year, some people were saying, oh, we've never had a woman in that position. And
All
I'm
right.
like, are we really debating gender roles in 2019? And then I have some people say, you're too young to be a leader in the church. And I'm like, I'm a whole 43 years old with almost 15-year-old. Like, I've had my own business for 15 years. I pay all my own bills. So like, how is it that you're trying to decide, like, if I'm old enough to be a leader in, like, God's church? Like, and it's just like so much, baggage that we hold on to that's really toxic, and it keeps people who have a true desire to be in ministry and to be a part of our churches from connecting with us, because they're like, wait, what are y'all talking about? Like, that's crazy, when they can go out and do that same work in a nonprofit, but they don't have the connection to Christ.
Well, you're talking about the toxic conversations or questions that people ask you. And I'm going to go back again to Reverend Teresa Fry Brown, because I want to give her credit for dropping this word. She said, we have to be able to have a new rhetoric where we eliminate this toxic privilege,
Right.
Conversations. And we should really have a rhetoric that's more inclusive, and one that's affirming for us with one another, and one that's more loving. And I just ask us to do that, to be able to talk to one another and not at one another more, as leaders and as ministers, and no matter who we are, and not to be so quick to erase one another from any kind of reshaping of church, just rethinking church. Don't get me started about rethinking church. Sometimes I say, I just want to raise a sign up and say, no justice, no peace in the church,
Right. And that's the reality, because a lot of people feel more oppressed within the church than they feel liberated. And, if that's kind of the mindset of people, that, the church is a place of oppression and bondage, and I can't be free, and I got to conform to all of these like norms, then I really just have to start, questioning, like, what are we doing? And
what are we doing?
Right. And I think that, the church, when you look at, the Acts model of the church, like, the church was a tent where, everyone was able to have access. And it's like today, the church has become a building with doors, with ushers, where we decide who gets to have access and who gets to come in. And if you're not dressed right, or if you're not the right age, or if you don't look right, and so we have like all these limitations that we place on people to get through the doors. And then we wonder why churches aren't growing. And it's like, because the people who need to be in here, who would otherwise freely come in, you've left out because they don't meet your standard. They don't meet what you look like. And I just have a lot.
They didn't check the box,
Exactly. Yes, they didn't check the box. And so it's like, and I think that's where, as you're talking about leadership and rethinking leadership, that's where leadership really has to do kind of a gut check. Like, am I the barrier to someone having access to the spirit and the truth? Am I, and my preconceived notions of what ministry looks like and what church looks like, am I the one standing in the way of someone getting in? Too often we don't do that. We don't check our implicit biases. Like, do I have an issue with women in leadership? Do I have an issue with young people voicing their opinion? Do I have an issue with people who don't pay as much as other people having a voice? Like, we don't think about like those things and how they prevent us from really creating the community that led to the explosive growth that the churches in biblical times saw.
Well, when you talk about how we as leaders may impact, what impact we have on those who we encounter, this is not written down in Webster nowhere, but I say every leader is not a minister and every minister is not a leader. That's just what I believe. And as I continue to grow, I think about the fact that the leadership gaps, how we measure the leadership gaps, how we identify the gap, how we relate the leadership style that we have to the leadership style that we need in regards to the outcome. when it comes to church, I'm not talking about bottom lines. I'm talking about souls. You know what I mean?
Right,
That
right.
the word and what we do could be the difference between life and death of someone spiritually. You know,
Oh yeah.
someone, and that is what I'm mindful of. And so we have to walk daily and constantly asking God to lead and order our steps. Right? I said, Lord, order my thoughts as well. You know,
Oh yeah.
because you know, we're still flesh, but at the same time, I'm asking God to just continue to transform us for what we could do today, what we could do tomorrow, how we could do from moment to moment to help encourage one another. You know,
Yeah.
when we talk about transformation, transforming visions into strategies and action, you, with your platform of Rethinking Church, you did just that. You took that vision, and I don't know what anybody else was saying or thinking as they was watching you unfold, or those who know you and like trying to figure out what you were doing, but it was between you and God, and you had prayed about it. God has spoken to you about it, and you went out there and you just took what the vision that God gave you and you turned it into strategies and actions. And so that's why God pricked my heart in this time, and I was thinking about everyone I know who's a leader and everyone I know who's in ministry, be it, or everyone who's in business. What does rethinking leadership look like for them now? Because some are reorganizing. And so how do we measure the strengths and weaknesses of our leadership styles, and what impact, if any, they have on the relationship that we have with one another, or that we have with those we come in close contact with? Um, so right now, your think tanks and your platform have really set the bar, you know, for going forward. Look, that's just my opinion. I love it. I stand by it.
Oh, thank you.
I think that, again, you had people on the platform. One, you started out with a woman, so you didn't have the traditional
Right.
platform, and then you had the think tanks that gave everybody a chance to join and be able to come together. The network has grown. I've met new people, and I'm better because of it. The conversation that we can have, because we don't have all the answers, and
Right.
we need to be able to collaborate more. And so your platform has expanded that those relationships and created new ones. And so I just want to applaud you, celebrate you, and congratulate you. And I will continue to keep you in prayer. Is there one last thing or a couple last things you want to say about either maybe what book you're reading or how people can reach you?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for your willingness and your participation in this summit, because as I told everyone, like I say thank you all the time, because it would not have been what it was without the attendees, without the presenters, and everyone just allowing themselves to be open in that moment to meeting new people and receiving new information. And I truly believe that's what it's going to take to move us forward. Right now, what am I reading? I have several books on Audible, so I kind of waver between Dr. Miguel de la Torre has some books. He was one of our speakers, and he has a book. I can't think of the name of it right now. Reading, like, there's so many political books that are out. So for people who know me, I'm a political junkie. So I waver between like Rachel Maddow's book, which is like fascinating on like the history of like oil production and the current like corruption in our political system. So, and then, you know, I'll do like some historical books, like some W.E.B. Du Bois. Yeah, so I read some of those, and then I have a few books that I'm trying to finish writing. I've already published 16 books, but I wanted to hit 20 by the end of the year. Not quite sure if that's going to happen or not, but
ambition, that's it.
Right.
Call you overachiever, because you're just doing what God has put in you, and you're doing it boldly. So,
Yeah.
and I just applaud you for being able to just share with us and share your platform, and then inviting everyone in. And yes, people will say, so you're not the pastor, and why you're doing all this, you know, but listen, can we talk about radical productivity? Can we talk about doing what God gave you to do and not waiting for the approval of everyone else to be able to do it? I say that a shepherd knows his sheep.
Yeah.
And that's what matters, you know?
Well, Well, you know, my motto is, and my motto from the time I started my business, that there are millions of people in the world, and I don't feel like my job is to save everybody. So, you know, I'm okay with the fact that there are some people who don't like what I do. Some people don't want to be a part of what I do. Some people are just like, whatever. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, I don't feel like I have to convince everyone to be a part of the works that I'm doing. So for those people who are like, yes, like this is what I'm missing, this is what I need, like, it's a tent. Like, I welcome you to come in. But if you don't want to come in, like, there's no pressure. Like, I'm not beating down anybody's door. Like, you've got to come and be a part of this. Like, yo, like, if you don't want to do it, like, you don't have to. Like, it is okay. Like, I still love you. You're still a beautiful person. You can talk bad about me. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm good because I'm doing what God has called me to do, and I'm leading the people that God has called to be a part of the work with me. So, you know, like, and I think that that's the attitude, like, more people have to take with ministry, and they won't be so, like, kind of consumed with, like, the haters and the naysayers and all that. Like, you're always going to have haters and naysayers. And just like Nehemiah, like, when he was building the wall, like, there were people who were just like, you know, they had a lot to say, but he said, you know what, God gave me this vision, and I'm going to stick with it. And he built the wall, and he had a community of people who wanted to build the wall also, who helped him. So I think we just have to focus more on the people who want to do the work with us versus the people who, you know, are standing outside the gates, you know, talking bad. Because most of the time, like, they're not building anything. They don't have any fruits. Like, they don't have any productivity. So leave them where they are. For everybody who wants to be a part, like, follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, at Lakeisha Womack. And you'll see, like, my posts, and, you know, get involved if you want to. And if you don't, it's okay. I promise.
Well, I tell you, well, I'm already taking this journey down here with you because I'm just grateful again for being able to come across your invite, being able to come across the platform. And one of the things that I think we should always be mindful of that I ran across on one of the videos today was don't fear failure, but we should be terrified of regret.
Right.
You know, where we didn't do something because we weren't sure of the protocol, or we weren't clear on the protocol, you know. And so again, I believe that if we can trust God, God is going to make a way, as they say, for us. You know, he's blessed us, he's gifted us, and I still trust God. You know, I look to him for my help, you know,
every day.
Every single day, you know, God, okay, it's me and you today. What we going to do?
What are we doing today?
You know? And, you know, and I love to have that happy, that joy and that happiness where I know that I answer to him, you know. And so I just trust that other people would take note, and because you never know who's watching you.
You never know.
You never know. And so when it comes to leadership, when it comes to mentoring, when it comes to saving souls, when it comes to speaking life into people, you just never know who's watching you, you know. And so we have to walk like we know somebody's watching us. And we have to do ministry like someone who's watching us, you know. And so I just want to say thank you, because I was watching you. I met you online. I haven't met you in person. I can't tell you how many people I have really close relationship with. My webmaster, my social media consultant for my foundation, who does all the work for me. I've never met them in person.
Right.
I never met you in person. You're in North Carolina. I'm here in Virginia, right?
Yeah.
And so this is what evangelism really looks like. It's outside of the walls of the church, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm just grateful for it. So, Miss Womack, I just want to say thank you. And we will continue to do the work like Nehemiah, determined.
Yes.
And not worrying about what other people are saying, just doing the work.
Amen. And thank you so much for having me on your show today.
All right. Blessing. Now, I'll talk to you in the near future now.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.